Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that is literally at the very heart of education: how to get our students to actually hold on to our lessons. Look, if you've ever felt like your carefully planned words are just going in one ear and right out the other, well, you're definitely in the right place. We're drawing insights from the art of lasting knowledge to explore a massive, game-changing paradigm shift for educators. So let's just dive right in.
Now, this simple truth is going to be our anchor for today. Learning isn't about hearing, it's about remembering. Just kind of let that sink in for a second. We spend so much time, so much energy perfecting our delivery, our slides, our handouts, right? But this statement radically redirects our focus. It demands that we measure our success not by how eloquently we speak, but by what our students actually retain. It's a total reframing of our primary goal as teachers.
And that brings us to a universal frustration we've all faced: the illusion of learning. Picture this. You deliver a fantastic lesson. Your students are nodding, they're making eye contact, maybe they're even smiling. It feels like learning is happening right there in the room. But as our source material points out, that feeling, it can be a complete mirage. Just because a student is present and listening absolutely does not mean the information is being encoded into their brain. Presence doesn't equal encoding, and we've got to shatter that illusion once and for all.
Because here is why that illusion is just so dangerous. If you really want your students to retain what you teach, you have to recognize the harsh reality that they forget almost everything if they only hear it one single time. The one-and-done problem is basically the enemy of lasting knowledge. Human memory simply isn't designed to hold on to passing auditory information without a compelling reason to keep it. When we treat our classrooms as one-way broadcasting stations, we're essentially fighting against the natural biology of the human brain. And spoiler alert, the brain usually wins.
This is exactly why our traditional lecture methods are so often falling short. I mean, for generations, the standard model of education has been the lecture, right? The expert stands at the front, pours out information, and hopes the students soak it all up like little sponges. But as we just established with the one-and-done problem, well, sponges dry out. When an entire lesson relies on passive absorption, retention rates just plummet. The lecture format, by its very nature, often fails to trigger the cognitive processes required to actually build a lasting memory.
So we really have to recognize the stark contrast between the old way of doing things and the new reality. Merely repeating a lecture, saying it again if a student didn't get it the first time, that's still just passive repetition. But active memory building, that is where the magic happens. This is where knowledge becomes permanent. We have to transition our students from being passive receivers of repeated information to active builders of their own understanding.
So, the million-dollar question we've got to ask ourselves is, how do we make knowledge last? If speaking at them isn't working and just repeating ourselves louder or slower isn't working, what are the actual mechanics of retention? How do we hack the learning process to ensure that the time we spend teaching translates into permanent, rock-solid understanding? To fix this, the art of lasting knowledge identifies 3 actionable pillars. And the best part? These aren't just abstract, pie-in-the-sky theories. They are highly practical, psychological levers you can pull in your classroom tomorrow to immediately boost retention and turn those passive listeners into active learners. Here is our Rule of 3 framework for building that retention. Actively retrieve, connect prior knowledge, and review over time. These 3 steps represent the core architecture of an effective, sticky lesson plan.
First up, we have active retrieval. This requires a fundamental shift from pushing information at your students to challenging them to pull that information back out. This is absolutely huge. Every single time a learner is forced to search their brain for an answer and pull it forward, they are physically strengthening the neural pathway to that information. Think of it like exercising a muscle. You don't get stronger by having someone explain how to lift a weight, right? You get stronger by actually lifting the heavy thing. Active retrieval is the mental heavy lifting that builds lasting knowledge.
Next, you absolutely must connect new information with prior knowledge. You've got to hook that unfamiliar data to foundations the learner already possesses. Think of a student's existing knowledge as a wall covered in hooks. If you just toss new, random information at them, it's just going to slide right off and hit the floor. But if you deliberately show them how this new, unfamiliar concept attaches directly to a hook they already know and understand, well, it hangs securely. It gives the new information context and meaning, which makes it infinitely easier for the brain to file away and find later. Finally, memory becomes significantly stronger when you implement spaced reviews of the material over time. This is how you cement those concepts deep into long-term memory. We talked earlier about the one-and-done problem, right? Well, spaced review is the direct antidote to that. You don't just teach a concept on Monday, test it on Friday, and then never speak of it again for the rest of the year. You bring it back a week later, then a month later. By continually interrupting the brain's natural forgetting curve, you signal to it, hey, this information is actually important. We need to store this permanently.
Okay, so now that we understand the theory behind retrieval, connection, and spaced review, let's turn that theory into practice. We need to swap the exhausting habit of repeating lessons over and over for these specific, highly effective memory-building actions.
We can directly map each memory pillar to a very practical classroom action. To trigger active retrieval, swap out the repeated lecture and use quizzes instead. And I mean low-stakes quizzing. That forces the brain to do that heavy lifting we talked about without the anxiety of a major exam. To activate prior knowledge, foster engaging discussions. Get the students talking so they organically link what they are currently learning to what they already know. And for spaced review, it's honestly as simple as deliberately scheduling those reviews into your semester calendar. Just plan for it. Don't leave it to chance.
Ultimately, this means abandoning some old habits and consciously adopting new ones. We've got to stop repeating the same lecture. If they didn't retain it the first time, just sing it louder or slower isn't going to magically fix the memory issue. Instead, start integrating quizzes to force mental retrieval. Start leading discussions to build those prior knowledge connections. And start utilizing spaced reviews to ensure the knowledge actually has longevity.
Rethinking your classroom really means auditing your current lesson plans. Take a look at a standard week of your teaching. Honestly ask yourself, how much time is spent pushing information out and how much time is intentionally designed to pull information out of your students? By shifting that balance heavily toward pulling information out, you transform your room from a place where speaking happens into an environment where lasting learning is guaranteed.
We return to our anchor quote to emphatically remind ourselves that our primary goal as educators is to facilitate remembering, not just speaking. Learning isn't about hearing, it's about remembering. It is such a simple, unassuming phrase, yet it fundamentally challenges everything about traditional education. Our success is quite literally written in the memories of our students.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to challenge your current teaching habits. Are you just talking at your students, or are you actually helping them build lasting memory? It's a tough question, I know, but it's a completely necessary one. If you use the tools we explored today, active retrieval, prior knowledge connection, and spaced review, you'll be amazed at how effectively you can help your students build knowledge that truly lasts. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Have a great week and happy teaching.